After the disappointment of Galatasaray, and that's me being, polite. It was a serious disappointment. Another game where United threw all away. We've had Everton away, we've had Galatasaray away. Now we've got Newcastle away. It's going to be a tough game. They've got a very thin squad, a really taxing 1-1 draw against PSG, but we had a very taxing game against Galatasaray. What's Ten Hag been saying ahead of the game? I'm going to run through his team news from his press conference, conversations on, of course, Onana, Mason Mount being back on the pitch. What about Kobbie Mainoo? Will he start? What changes are needed? I'm going to cover all of it in this video, and I think genuinely some real changes are needed. And I'm going to run through exactly what I think they should be and why. So if you do enjoy the video, maybe you will. Drop a like on it by the end of it. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. But let's dive into Ten Hag's press conference. What's he said? Now, good news for Mason Mount. He's back on the pitch. I don't know how long he's going to be out for. We were told, I think, it was going to be like about a month he was out for. And he's been out for, what, a week so far? So presumably, at some point during December, we're going to see Mason Mount back in the team. Or back in the squad. I don't really know where he fits in that team. I'll be completely honest. I still don't. Overall. In terms of Onana, this is what Erik Ten Hag said. And I don't know why anybody's suggesting that Onana's... I do know why people are suggesting that Onana could be dropped, but I don't think he will be. And Ten Hag, I don't think is going to drop him. And I think that's a bit indicative towards it there. And Ten Hag said this about Kobbie Mainoo as well. Look, he's ready, man. He looked ready against Everton. He was ready. He looked ready against Galatasaray. He was ready. So does he come into the team? This was a team that started away at Galatasaray. And I think there will be some changes. But spoiler alert, it's not going to be Onana. Onana will keep his place in this team. Ten Hag stuck by him during the early wobbles. This one's a bit different. The reason I'm saying it's different is because we've already had the wobble and the recovery. And now we've gone into the wobble again. And it's individual errors. A lot of it's individual errors. But a lot of it as well is how the team is playing. And I've told you that. And that's why these changes that I'm going to mention in this game, they have to happen. All right? Because Manchester United are just conceding too many shots. It's just facts. All right? Rafa Benitez facts. This is us losing the ball. McTominay there. Losing on the ball. Bruno far up the pitch. McTominay obviously the whole way over there. And look at the space between our defence and our attackers. Look out. You can't even see Lindelof and Maguire. They're not even on the screen. They're that deep. And Amrabat is trying to cover on his own like 50, 60 yards of space. That space has to be reduced. And in my opinion, that space only gets reduced if changes are made to this starting 11. Now, this is one of them, all right? This is one change I want to see. Lindelof dropping to the bench and Luke Shaw going in as left centre-back. The reason I'm saying that, we need, for this to be avoided, right? Our defence, there's two reasons. There's two ways to fix that. Number one, which I'm going to present a solution for as well, is not having such aggressive number 8s. Number two is having a slightly higher defensive line. Playing Luke Shaw left centre-back gives you a little bit of an opportunity to do that. And by doing so, you then bring in, of course, Diogo Dalot at left-back. And that will be my back five. One change. Erik Ten Hag doesn't really like changing that much. But I just don't think the way that this midfield is set up right now is sustainable. It was Bruno and McTominay in front of Amrabat, and there was just so much space, man. Amrabat dropping in, sort of trying to cover this space on his own, but McTominay kind of running up there, Bruno kind of running up there, and you can see where the problems are. I mean, it's that absolutely massive, huge space in the middle. You can't cover that on your own. So therefore, the midfield setup has to be different. And I think also the defensive setup. So I want to bring Luke Shaw in at left centre-back and Dalot to come in at left-back. I think that would help. Now, Dalot, as I said, I think he was in like the Premier League team of the month for who scored on the right as a right-back. Wan-Bissaka was weird against Galatasaray. Kind of went under the radar, kind of how poor he was. Isn't it weird? Like when Wan-Bissaka plays on form, he's great. But then when he drops out of form, he kind of ends up like jogging around. But there's one huge change that has to happen in midfield. All right? And it is Scott McTominay. Scott McTominay on form over these last 6 weeks has probably been one of our most important players. But what got you here won't get you there. Something I always say. And McTominay got United out of a hole with his goals when we had no goal scorers. However, the added goal threat that McTominay has in this team is not worth the lack of control that comes with him being in it. And this is a big thing too, right? Scott McTominay and Bruno Fernandes are two midfielders who are number 8s, really, who they aren't going to be involved in a build-up. They are going to be slightly isolated-ish from the team. You won't, but Bruno Fernandes is that good that Man United can accommodate for him. What we can't do is accommodate him and McTominay both in the same starting team. So that is why, for me, McTominay, this is the change I want to see. McTominay going to the bench and Mainoo coming in alongside Amrabat and playing more like that. This is the team I want to see Amrabat start with Mainoo. Now, there's going to be people in the comments going, Sam, how are you dropping McTominay, man? He scored a goal. Amrabat's form's been, look, I'll be honest, nowhere near as impactful as I wanted him to be. And you wouldn't be wrong. However, I've seen enough now of McTominay and Bruno in the same team to know that it's just not the solution. The solution, we need to find a solution to this. One solution, playing with a slightly more athletic line that can play a higher line, so the gap between your attack and defence, you can make that gap here smaller. Because that defence can squeeze up a bit, you make it smaller. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, I think, is playing Amrabat and Mainoo together. Two midfielders who will be far more naturally inclined to control a game of football. We've spoken about it so much. And this is what Ten Hag said about Mainoo as well. I thought this was quite nice. He's talking about his scanning. Looking left, looking right, seeing where a player is when he's 5 yards away. So by the time you've got the ball, you know exactly where everyone is. You won't get caught out. That's what Kobbie Mainoo does. But that's what every good central midfielder in the world does, like the top level. You have to scan. You have to know what you're doing before you got the ball and what's going to happen next before you've got the ball. And not everyone does that. When you can do that in real time, it makes you a very important player. But for me, I don't know whether it's going to happen in this game. Maybe you might say, can't do that at Newcastle away. It's going to be very intense. Maybe. That's the midfield I'd like to see. And I'm going to predict it to try and make it happen. I don't think it will. I think it probably will stay in the team, McTominay. But I just think this is in the current squad, we don't have many solutions to that lack of control in midfield. I think that is one solution. Now, somebody who's available for this game is Marcus Rashford. So the big question is, does he come into this team? And I think he does, right? And I think he comes in at left wing. Because Garnacho, I think, when he came off, Garnacho has been absolutely incredible in these last couple of games this week. The goal he scored against Galatasaray and Everton. But he did look shagged. When he came off, he looked like he'd run himself into the ground because he's been tracking back in these last two games. Something he hasn't really been doing much. He's developing as a player, for sure. Rashford's rested. I think Rashford comes in and starts. And I genuinely do think that Anthony had his best game in the United shirt for a while. I think he starts out on that right-hand side. If you imagine that Newcastle, and people are going to be annoyed about this because Garnacho's not in the starting 11. And I can understand because he's been so impressive. But this is a Newcastle team which had 11 players and they didn't make one sub against PSG. They are depleted. I'd much rather see Garnacho had that half an hour running at those tired legs than the start of it where Newcastle will have that intensity. They will come out fast. They will. But I don't think they're going to have the energy. Maybe I'll be surprised. And they will have the energy to last. But I don't think so. And I would rather see Garnacho come off the bench in this game than start it. You know, somebody we didn't really speak about that much during the game against Galatasaray was Højlund. Because, of course, Garnacho was stealing the limelight. Bruno got the goal. And Anthony, I think, had a really good performance. So there was a little bit less focus on Højlund. If he's fit, he starts. And I think he's going to be sort of playing 60 minutes because Martial's looking all right now. As it stands, touch wood and all that. I think he'll play 60 minutes and then Martial will come on, sort of pre-planned substitute. And again, I would rather see Højlund from the start and Martial for the last 30 than the other way around. That's just personal preference, though. So you might disagree with me, but that's the starting 11 that I would like to see. Sure, moving into left centre-back with Delo at left-back gives us a bit more ability to play a higher line. Not completely because we've got Maguire, so you've got to be careful. I want to see Amrabat playing alongside Mainoo in midfield with Bruno as a number 10, dropping McTominay and giving us more control in midfield. And I'm bringing in Rashford to start on the left, and that's the only change up front. But, not everyone's going to agree with that because, obviously, McTominay, you could keep him in there, and Not many people are going to be dropping Garnacho, but I think I'd rather have him from the bench in this game. I think he just looks shagged. Might be wrong. If he's 100% fit, then I think he probably will start. And it'll probably be Rashford out on the right-hand side instead of Anthony. My prediction for this game, I think I'm going to go for a score draw. I think I'm going to go for a 2-2. I'm hoping that United... If we get ahead, how are we going to see this game out in a way that we haven't seen it out against Copenhagen, Galatasaray, and whatever other games it's happened in? For me, it comes in the midfield, and it comes in Mainoo and Amrabat together. You need two. The midfield just doesn't have the balance with Bruno and McTominay together. I'm not even sure the midfield has the balance with Bruno and Mount together, which is question marks. But I'm going to go for a 2-1 or a 2-2. That's my team, making a couple of changes. They're changes I think will help get us that control that we just haven't had in many games of football, and certainly haven't had in the Champions League. What's yours? You let me know in the comments. And by the way, I didn't even mention this. Very festive. How many Cantonards can you see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, indeed. 5 Cantonards.